So you're up and running with your milling machine DRO. You've seen our first video and you know the basics. You're watching the three coordinates always displayed on the home screen to understand where in space your tool and workpiece are, and you've maybe even found the center of some features. But what do all those other buttons do? I'm Charlie with Precision Matthews, and today we're going to check out some of the more advanced features of this DRO. From some of the bolt hole macro routines to the use of subdatums, you might be surprised how capable these DROs really are. We're using our MX200 DRO for this video since its interface tells you a bit more about what's going on, but all of the features covered in this video are on both the MX100 and MX200 DROs. We'll show you how to set up the macros on both models so you can watch the half of the screen that applies to your DRO. For this bolt hole circle macro, I made up a sample part that calls for 5 holes drilled in a circle centered on x equal 2 inches, y equal 2¼ inches, with a circle radius of 2 inches. I made it so that the starting hole was 15 degrees off from straight across on the x-axis, but any of these parameters can be changed to fit what your part needs. Once you know about this function, you'll start seeing bolt hole circles everywhere. Flanges, the ends of shafts, even patterns with just 2 holes centered around a datum at a specific angle are all common, and this macro takes a lot of calculations and scratch paperwork out of the process of making these parts. Plus, you'll be the most popular guy at the party when you point out that the flange on the radiator has a bolt hole pattern that you could easily duplicate with your Mill DRO. I assume people would like that. I don't get invited to parties much. Like last video, we're using a Sharpie marker to put dots on paper, but most of the time you'll be spot drilling, pilot drilling, and then drilling, reaming, tapping, or however you're finishing the hole. Note that the DRO will loop back to the first hole when you scroll past the last hole, so you can spot all the holes in order, then come around again as many times as you need to do any subsequent operations. The grid hole function is also very useful. For this sample part, we're saying we want to start a grid at x equals 1/2 inch, y equals 1 inch. We chose a 0-degree angle so that the numbers would all line up nicely with the x and y axes. That would be the most common way to do it unless there's some special work holding consideration that requires an angle there. Pitch distance 1 and 2, as well as number of holes 1 and 2, are just how far apart the holes are and how many there are on the x and y axes respectively. I made up some numbers for these, but you can of course make them any value you need. Just like with the bolt hole circle, you just scroll to each location, navigate the table on your mill until the display reads zeros, and run whatever process you need. Just like with the bolt hole circle, the DRO will loop back to the first hole, so you can do multiple passes for multiple operations. And just like with the bolt hole circle macro, now you'll start seeing grid patterns everywhere. My wife loves when I point out parts in the real world and tell her how I would make them on a manual mill. Try that with any romantic interests you might have. Also, big disclaimer here, you should not take relationship advice from a machining channel. You might say, but Charlie, it's not just circles and grids out there. I also see lines of holes everywhere in the real world. Yeah, me too. And for that, I use the line hole function. For this example, I'm starting with a hole centered at 3/4 inch in on the x and y axes, then drilling 5 holes 1/2 inch apart. Because you could probably do that math in your head if it aligned with one of the axes, I've tilted this line 45 degrees. Maybe you're smarter than me, but I can't do the coordinates along a 45-degree line in my head. And if I try to do it on scratch paper, I run out of crayons very quickly. You get the idea by now. We're just scrolling through each location, doing whatever operation we need, then looping back to the beginning for subsequent operations if we need to. Subdatums are a tremendously powerful tool, and we'll just scratch the surface here, but you can think of them as storing a list of coordinates that you can scroll through and navigate to. In that way, they're just like the previous macros we've covered, but the values can be anything. They don't have to be a circle, grid, or line. Note that the value displayed in the upper right-hand corner of the screen tells you the feed rate and is only present on the MX200, not the MX100. If I was really milling a pocket and not just marking with a Sharpie, I would watch this value as I cranked the table to run the milling operation. During filming, we had a friendly competition to see who could crank the fastest. Congratulations to our cameraman Jeff, who maxed out just under 40 inches per minute. If you can beat that, send us a picture of the screen and we'll let Jeff know that he has to hit the gym. For this example, I pretend that I'm milling a rectangular pocket and the 4 subdatums I'm entering are the corners of that pocket. That way, I can navigate to each corner to cut the perimeter of the pocket, then clean up the inside with further passes if need be. In this example, the Sharpie mark that gets made is the outside perimeter of the pocket. The number of parts that can be made using subdatums are just about endless, so if you're anything like me, your wife will get real tired of hearing you say subdatum. But that's just the price you pay to live with someone who knows how to use the advanced features of a milling machine DRO. Sure, most of your time using a Mill DRO involves staring at the 3 important numbers and navigating your machine to presupposed points. But as you can see, these DROs are capable of a lot more than that. So even if you don't use these features every day, it's good to know how to use them when you need them. As always, remember to subscribe to our channel for more instructional videos like this, and leave us a comment if there's anything we forgot to cover. Thanks for watching.